Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere, at this very moment, there may be a man whose mind keeps returning to you. Not casually, not as a fleeting memory that passes and disappears, but deeply, repeatedly. He finds himself caught in the image of your face, the sound of your voice, the small expressions you make when something interests you, the way your presence lingers even after you are gone. He may try to dismiss it. He may bury himself in work, conversations, responsibilities, or distractions. But somehow, your name still rises in his mind, like a melody he cannot stop hearing. Even if he never says it out loud, even if he refuses to admit it to you, and perhaps even to himself, his body has already begun to reveal the truth. His gestures, his timing, his tone, his attention, the subtle shifts in the way he behaves around you, they all expose what his words may still be hiding. He is emotionally invested far more deeply than you might understand. And yet, you may not see it. Why? Because most people have been taught to search for the wrong signs. You have been conditioned to trust words above everything else. Grand confessions, dramatic promises, romantic speeches, obvious displays of affection that look impressive from the outside. Movies, stories, social expectations, and even the advice of well-meaning friends have trained you to wait for the fireworks. But real emotional attachment is often not fireworks. It is a quiet flame. It burns lower, deeper, and far more consistently. True male desire, the kind that reaches beyond physical attraction, often hides inside a silent code. It is not always spoken directly. It is revealed through patterns, instincts, reactions, and small unconscious behaviors. Very few women are ever taught how to read this language. But once you understand it, you will never confuse shallow interest with something real again. This is the silent language of the male mind. Carl Jung, one of the most important psychological thinkers of the modern age, spent his life studying the hidden forces that shape human behavior. And through his work on the unconscious, he revealed something powerful about love and attraction. When a man is truly drawn to a woman, not merely by beauty or temporary excitement, but by something deeper in the psyche, his unconscious begins to respond before his conscious mind can control it. And that response leaks through him. It appears in involuntary signals, in the way he looks at her, in the way his posture changes, in the tone of his voice, in the patterns of behavior he may not even realize he is repeating. These signals are difficult to fake because they do not come from performance. They come from the deeper layers of the mind. And the tragedy is that most women misread them completely. Some overlook them as meaningless habits. Others mistake them for games, mixed signals, or manipulation. But often, what they are seeing is not confusion at all. It is the unconscious speaking, before the man has found the courage to speak for himself. And perhaps worst of all, many completely ignore a man who is deeply in love, simply because his devotion is not expressed in the loud, obvious ways they expect. You've probably felt this before, a subtle tug in your gut, that strange instinct that something doesn't add up. Perhaps a man said all the right things, but there was a hollowness in his follow-through. Or maybe the opposite. He never verbalized his feelings, but something in the way he looked at you, listened to you, or showed up for you, told you there was more. That isn't coincidence. That isn't imagination. That's your unconscious picking up signals. Your conscious mind hasn't been trained to decode beyond seduction and tricks. What I'm about to reveal is not about seduction techniques or manipulative tactics. This isn't play hard to get, mirror his body language, or say this to make him chase you. No, this is much deeper. This is about the truth of what happens inside a man when he meets a woman who awakens in him not only physical desire, but a connection that transcends reason. There is a pattern, a kind of secret language in the way he moves, the way his eyes rest on you, the way he rearranges the space between you without thinking. Once you learn to read this language, you will never again feel lost in cycles of doubt. You will never again wonder if his interest is real or fleeting, because you will know. Jung's great contribution to this understanding comes from his theory of archetypes, universal patterns of behavior embedded deep within the human collective unconscious. Among the male archetypes, one of the most powerful is the lover. When activated, the lover archetype transforms a man completely. It doesn't just make him attracted to someone. It makes him see her as essential to his sense of meaning. It triggers ancient instincts long before spoken language, when human connection was signaled not through verbal declarations, but through presence, gesture, and protection. This shift cannot be faked. A man in this state is driven by forces far beyond his rational mind. The problem? Emotional disguise. From childhood, most men are taught to hide their emotions. They hear phrases like, "Don't cry," "Be strong," "Don't show weakness." These instructions build a wall between what a man feels and what he expresses verbally, even when he is in love. The conditioning to suppress emotion often overpowers the urge to say it out loud. But, and this is where Jung's insight becomes invaluable, the body never lies. While the conscious mind censors, filters, and edits words, the unconscious communicates freely through physical signals. The length of his gaze, the orientation of his body toward you, the subtle lowering of his voice when speaking to you, the way he remembers seemingly small things you say. Words can lie. Actions cannot. Think about a man who has sent you confusing signals. Maybe he says he's interested, but disappears for days. Or maybe he never says, "I love you," yet shows up without fail whenever you need help. Which one is truly emotionally involved? The answer lies not in his speech, but in his pattern of behavior. Neuroscience backs this up. Studies show that when a man is genuinely in love, his brain releases a unique blend of dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin. These chemicals directly shape his actions in ways he cannot fully control. Dopamine makes your presence feel rewarding, almost addictive. He finds excuses to be near you without even realizing why. Oxytocin builds an instinctive bond, making him feel protective and drawn to create safety around you. Serotonin shifts his mood baseline, anchoring positive feelings to your presence. How this plays out in reality. When the lover archetype takes hold, the man doesn't think, "I should make time for her to show I care." He simply finds himself doing it, adjusting schedules, rearranging priorities, making space. He doesn't plan to memorize the little details you share. His mind stores them automatically because they matter to him on a subconscious level. He doesn't have to try to be near you in social settings. His body angles toward you, his feet point your way, his attention drifts to you even when others are speaking. This is unconscious attraction in action. Why you may have missed it before. Our culture glorifies the grand gesture, the public declaration, the ring hidden in a champagne glass, the viral romantic stunt. But real love often reveals itself in the smallest, quietest acts. He remembers the brand of tea you drink and buys it without being asked. He notices the strain in your voice before you admit you've had a bad day. He leans in slightly when you speak in a noisy room, not because he has to, but because you are the most important sound in the space. Before we begin unveiling the 8 universal signs, you need to understand one of Jung's most intriguing concepts, synchronicity. Jung describes synchronicity as meaningful coincidence, events that seem connected, not through cause and effect, but through an unseen thread in the unconscious. When a man is emotionally connected to you on a deep archetypal level, synchronicities begin to appear, almost magically. He calls or messages you at the exact moment you were thinking of him. You discover you share oddly specific life experiences or obscure interests. You bump into each other in places neither of you planned to be. Jung would say that this isn't random chance. It's the unconscious aligning reality around your connection. And while these events may seem small, they point to something much bigger. Your presence in his mind is constant enough to shape his actions, sometimes without him realizing it. The hidden network of the mind. Neuroscience today supports parts of Jung's insight. When we form a deep emotional bond, our brains create strong neural pathways associated with that person. These pathways are so active that they influence seemingly unrelated decisions. For example, he may decide to go to a certain cafe because he feels like it, but part of that impulse is the memory of a conversation you once had about their pastries. He might choose to take a certain route home because, subconsciously, he knows it passes near your neighborhood. These aren't calculated moves. They are unconscious pulls toward proximity. Why you often overlook these moments. The human mind is wired to notice dramatic events more than subtle patterns. We remember the big fight, the passionate kiss, the romantic surprise. But the small repetitions, his consistent presence, his tendency to recall your exact words, often fade into the background. This is why so many women misread genuine interest. They're scanning for the loudest signals, when the truth is whispered. The first sign, the eyes that see more. Jung famously referred to the eyes as windows to the soul. Science backs this up. Our pupils dilate involuntarily when we look at someone we're deeply attracted to, and we tend to maintain longer eye contact with those we value. When a man is truly in love, his gaze changes in ways that are both subtle and unmistakable. 1. Depth and stillness. It's not a fleeting glance. It's as if he is absorbing you, taking in every detail as though he's afraid to forget. 2. Seeking you in a crowd. Even in a busy room, his eyes find yours repeatedly. This is not a conscious decision. It's his unconscious, navigating toward what matters most. 3. The stolen look. The most telling moments are when he watches you without realizing you've noticed. Not in a predatory way, but with fascination, admiration, and recognition, as though he's seeing you, not just your appearance. This gaze is different from purely physical attraction. Desire may make a man look at you like he's hungry. Love makes him look at you like you're home. How to recognize it in real life. You might catch it when he listens intently while you speak, his eyes locked, his face calm. You turn your head in a group conversation and realize he's been looking at you the whole time. He watches you when you laugh, not just because you're beautiful, but because your joy seems to feed something in him. This kind of eye contact can feel almost too intimate, even if you've known each other for years. That's because it's not just about attraction. It's about a deep internal acknowledgement. This person matters to me beyond reason. Why men can't fake it for long. A man can rehearse compliments. He can plan romantic gestures. He can even imitate some body language cues. But the eyes? That's the domain of the autonomic nervous system, the part of the body that reacts without conscious thought. Dilated pupils are not under voluntary control. Micro-expressions of fascination or tenderness appear in less than half a second, too quickly to fake. The slight softening of the eyes when looking at someone beloved is a muscle pattern the brain doesn't activate unless the emotion is genuine. If you see this combination, softness, intensity, and a seeking gaze, it's one of the most reliable indicators of emotional involvement. Why this matters before anything else. Jung would say that love begins in the unconscious recognition of the anima, the internal image of the ideal partner in a man's psyche. This recognition often sparks through the eyes first. The eyes convey what words can't yet frame. I know you, even though I shouldn't. In modern terms, you could say the eyes are the first messenger between two unconscious minds. Before the hands touch, before the words deepen, the gaze has already built a bridge, preparing for the next layer. The gaze is just the beginning. Once the lover archetype is active, the man's behavior begins to shift in more practical, noticeable ways. Jung observed that time and space are the next domains where unconscious love makes itself known. When a man is emotionally invested, he rearranges his schedule for you. He finds excuses to be physically closer. He maintains consistent availability, not as a tactic, but as a natural reflex. These changes are not acts of discipline. They are what happens when your presence becomes a priority on a subconscious level. Once the gaze has shifted, once his unconscious has locked onto you, the next transformation happens in the realm of time and space. Jung noted that when someone becomes deeply important to us, our unconscious begins to restructure our environment around them. This is not a planned effort, it is instinct. A man who is emotionally involved starts altering his schedule, his physical surroundings, and even his personal habits, without needing to rationalize why. Time, the unconscious priority shift. One of the most telling signs is how he manages his time. A man who is merely attracted might make plans if they're convenient, fit you in between other obligations, or cancel when something more important comes up. But a man who is truly involved will adjust his life around you. Not as a performance, but because his mind has placed you in a category that demands priority. It's in the little things. He stays up later than usual to keep talking to you. He leaves work early just to see you, even if only for a short time. He reschedules commitments that once felt non-negotiable. To the outside observer, these may seem like small shifts, but in the architecture of his unconscious, they're monumental. Because time is the one resource we can't replenish. When he gives it to you consistently and willingly, it's a direct signal of your importance. Space, the invisible pole. Jung also observed that physical proximity is one of the most ancient, nonverbal indicators of connection. We instinctively draw closer to those we care for and keep distance from those we distrust. An emotionally involved man doesn't just happen to be near you. His body subtly seeks you out in group settings. His feet point toward you even when he's speaking to someone else. His torso tilts in your direction, closing the gap. He chooses the seat beside you without consciously pawing it. And then there's touch, the small, almost invisible kinds. A hand on your back as you pass through a doorway. His fingers brushing yours when handing you something. The lingering contact in a hug, just half a second longer than politeness requires. These moments trigger oxytocin, the bonding hormone, at a much higher level when there is an emotional connection. You might notice subtle physical reactions. His breathing changes. His skin warms. His pupils shift. None of these can be staged with authenticity for long. Why time and space matter more than words. You can tell much about a man's priorities by where he consistently places himself and how often he chooses to be there with you. Many women have been caught in the trap of believing words over patterns. A man may say, "I'm just so busy right now," yet he finds hours for sports, hobbies, or casual friends. In contrast, an emotionally involved man's life begins to bend toward you, even if his schedule is packed. He carves out time because not doing so would feel unnatural to him. Selective memory, the third sign. The third universal sign Jung identified is selective memory. the unconscious habit of remembering what matters most. Here's the truth. The human mind is constantly filtering information, discarding what it deems irrelevant. Yet, an emotionally involved man will retain tiny details about you that others would overlook. He remembers the name of your childhood pet. He recalls the book you mentioned in passing 3 weeks ago. He notices and comments when you change your perfume or style your hair differently. This isn't effortful memorization. His mind captures these details the way a camera captures light, automatically and without deliberation, because you've become a central figure in his mental landscape. Why this is so revealing. When someone is important to us, the brain's hippocampus and amygdala, the regions responsible for memory and emotional processing, become highly active in their presence. Emotional significance enhances recall. That's why you may remember exactly what you wore on a day that changed your life, but not what you wore last Tuesday. An emotionally involved man doesn't have to try to remember. Your words, expressions, and preferences are stamped into his memory because his emotional brain has prioritized you. How to recognize selective memory in action. It often appears unexpectedly. He references a conversation you've long forgotten. He brings you a snack you once said you loved without you asking. He notices something you changed about your home decor and asks about it. These moments are proof that you occupy ongoing space in his thoughts, even when you're not there. Vulnerability, the bridge to the soul. The next sign, emotional vulnerability, often emerges after the patterns of time, space, and selective memory have taken root. Remember, most men have been conditioned to guard their feelings. But once the lover archetype is fully active, the barriers begin to lower. He starts sharing fears about the future, dreams he's never told anyone, failures or insecurities that threaten his self-image. This doesn't mean he suddenly becomes emotional in the way movies portray romance. Instead, it's found in small disclosures, statements that show he's willing to risk you seeing him without his armor. By the time a man reaches this stage, something profound has already shifted. His gaze lingers. His time bends toward you. His physical space narrows, and his memory stores details about you with precision. Now comes a deeper transformation, one that often makes even the strongest men uneasy: emotional vulnerability. Vulnerability, the rare invitation. Carl Jung believed that authentic connection happens only when two people are willing to lower their psychic armor. For men, this is especially challenging. Most have been trained since boyhood to avoid showing weakness, to protect their emotions from exposure. But when the lover archetype is activated, the instinct to guard begins to soften. A truly emotionally involved man will confide fears he hides from the world, share his private dreams and ambitions, admit insecurities, even if they make him feel exposed. These disclosures might not be dramatic confessions. They can be quiet moments. He mentions the pressure he feels at work. He tells you about a mistake from his past he rarely discusses. He reveals a hope for the future that feels too fragile to say to anyone else. This is not casual sharing. It's trust in motion. In Jung's terms, he is allowing you to see his shadow, the parts of himself he keeps hidden from most people. Why vulnerability is a high-stakes signal. Men don't take this step lightly. Vulnerability in front of someone they value deeply carries risk. The risk of rejection, of appearing weak, of being misunderstood. When a man lets you see his real fears and flaws, it means he is not trying to maintain an image with you. It means your presence feels safe enough for him to dismantle his defenses, something that rarely happens without deep emotional involvement. Social integration, the fifth sign. Jung observed that we integrate people into our identity through our social world. A man who is emotionally invested will begin merging you into his broader life. This might look like introducing you to his closest friends, talking about you to his family with pride, inviting you to events or traditions important to him. This is not about public display for status. It's about aligning his inner world with his outer one, making sure the people who matter to him know that you matter to him. And here's the subtle giveaway. It doesn't happen just once. You don't remain a hidden part of his life for months or years. He integrates you steadily, naturally, and without prompting. Why social integration is crucial. Think about it. We all maintain different zones of our lives: work, family, friends, hobbies. Bringing someone into multiple zones is an unconscious way of saying, you belong here. If a man keeps you entirely separate from his inner circle over time, it's often a sign the connection isn't central to his life. Emotional involvement is about inclusion, not just in words, but in the lived reality of his relationships, projecting a shared future. The sixth sign. The next step in this unfolding pattern is when he begins to see you in his future. Sometimes this is subtle. We should go there next summer. You'd love my hometown. I'll take you someday. Other times, it's more concrete, discussing the kind of home he'd want for both of you, talking about long-term plans with you naturally included. This isn't a pressure tactic. It's the absence of a world without you. The unconscious mind has already built a narrative where you're present months or years ahead. Why this is more than fantasy. Men can make casual promises without meaning them, but an emotionally involved man talks about the future in practical, integrated ways. The plans are woven into his real ambitions, not just someday dreams. Jung would describe this as the temporal expansion of the bond, the connection influencing how the man perceives time itself. The guardian instinct, the seventh sign. Perhaps one of the most powerful and primal indicators of deep involvement is the instinct to protect. This is not control or possessiveness. It is a genuine concern for your safety, well-being, and emotional stability. It emerges automatically when a man feels bonded on a soul-deep level. Examples include noticing when you're cold and offering his jacket, checking in when he knows you have a stressful event, intervening quietly when he senses you're uncomfortable in a social situation. These behaviors stem from what Jung called the guardian complex, a psychic structure activated. When we recognize someone is valuable and irreplaceable, the subtle forms of protection. Sometimes protection isn't dramatic. It's in the unspoken anticipation of your needs, adjusting his pace to match yours when walking, standing between you and a source of discomfort without comment, remembering to text you after you've traveled to make sure you arrived safely. You don't have to request it. It happens because your well-being has become embedded in his instinctive responses. By now, you've seen how an emotionally involved man reveals himself in 7 distinct ways through his gaze. His time, his proximity, his selective memory, his vulnerability, his social integration, and his guardian instinct. But none of these signs matter unless they stand the test of time. The 8th sign. Consistency. Anyone can display affection, attentiveness, or care for a week, a month, or even the thrilling first stages of romance. But emotional involvement is not measured in bursts of intensity. It is measured in the quiet repetition of care over time. Jung understood that authentic bonds are not built in the peak moments, but in the ordinary ones. Consistency looks like continuing to prioritize you, even after the excitement of the early stage fades. Showing up when it's inconvenient, keeping promises, and small and big matters alike. This doesn't mean perfection. Life is messy. People make mistakes. But a man who is truly invested will return, repair, and reaffirm over and over. Why consistency is the true test. A man can imitate the other 7 signs for a short period, consciously or unconsciously, if his main goal is attraction rather than connection. But time reveals everything. Without genuine emotional involvement, the signs fade, slip, or become inconsistent. With it, they endure, sometimes quietly, sometimes dramatically, but always with reliability. In Jungian terms, consistency shows that the connection has moved from a momentary psychic state to a permanent psychic structure within him. You are no longer an external addition to his life. You are part of its foundation, the pattern in full, all 8 signs. First, there is the gaze that stays a little longer than expected, an unconscious visual pull toward you, as if his eyes return before his mind even realizes it. Second, he begins to make time for you. Not in a forced or dramatic way, but naturally. His schedule starts creating space for your presence, because being near you becomes something he genuinely values. Third, there is proximity and touch. He finds reasons to be close. A gentle gesture, a small movement toward you, a quiet instinct to reduce the distance between you. Fourth, he remembers the little things. Details others would easily forget stay with him because your words matter more to him than ordinary conversation. Fifth, he allows vulnerability. He lets you see parts of himself that are usually guarded. The fears, the doubts, the softer truths he does not reveal to everyone. Sixth, he brings you into his world. He introduces you to the people, places, habits, and private spaces that matter to him. You are no longer kept on the outside of his life. Seventh, his protective instinct appears. He cares about your comfort, your safety, and your well-being without needing to be asked. His concern becomes natural, not performed. And eighth, all of this remains consistent over time, not just for a week, not only during the excitement of the beginning, but steadily through different moods, moments, and circumstances. So how should you use this awareness? Not as a checklist to pressure someone with, not as a way to interrogate him or analyze every tiny movement until love becomes anxiety. Use it as a lens. Watch, listen, observe the pattern. When most or all of these signs appear consistently over time, you are likely witnessing real emotional attachment, not just attraction, excitement, or temporary fascination. But when these signs are missing, or when they appear only occasionally and disappear just as quickly, it may reveal that his interest is based on convenience, mood, or circumstance, rather than something deeper and lasting. And this understanding changes everything. Because once you know what genuine emotional investment looks like, you stop clinging to words while ignoring behavior. You stop being impressed by surface-level romance that fades when effort is required. You stop wondering endlessly where you stand in someone's heart. Instead, you begin to recognize true connection earlier. You learn to walk away from inconsistency without blaming yourself. You choose relationships with structure, depth, and the potential to endure. Carl Jung once wrote, "The meeting of 2 personalities is like the contact of 2 chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." These 8 signs are the outward evidence of that inner transformation within a man. When they appear together, you are not merely someone he finds attractive. You are not just someone he enjoys spending time with. You are someone who has entered his inner world and changed something inside him. And once that kind of shift happens, it is not easily forgotten. If this opened your eyes, imagine how much more you can discover when you keep learning about the deeper psychology behind love, attraction, and emotional connection. Subscribe Turn on the notification bell and return each week for insights that help you understand relationships with more clarity, confidence, and wisdom. Your next breakthrough in love may be closer than you think.